I'm Diane Macedo. Today on ABC News Live, the White House is appointing a national monkeypox coordinator as 3 states declare emergency. At least 4 children in the U.S. have now tested positive. We have the latest on what you need to know. And the world's most wanted terrorist is now dead. The leader of Al-Qaeda, Osama bin Laden's right-hand man, has been killed in a CIA drone strike. We have team coverage on the operation and the potential fallout. But we begin with some breaking news. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has arrived in Taiwan. Now, China had said the visit would cross a red line, and Biden administration officials had warned the House Speaker against it. This is the highest level visit to Taiwan by a U.S. official in 25 years. ABC News contributor John Cohen joins us now for more on this. John, how significant is this visit?
Well, it's very significant, and it's occurring at a very tenuous time. Increasingly, China has sought to undermine and undercut U.S. competitiveness abroad. They have sought to undermine confidence in the U.S. government and in democratic institutions more broadly. They've engaged in a number of activities of late where they're seeking to project military power throughout their region. And this visit's occurring at the time when China is seeking to gain strategic, economic, and military superiority over the U.S. So it's a difficult time for this visit to be taking place.
So, John, why do it?
That's a good question, and there's a lot of people, I suspect, in government right now who are asking that question as well. What I would say is, while it may not be clear why this visit is occurring, the Speaker would know, and I'm sure she's had conversations, or I suspect she's had conversations with senior White House officials as to why this is the time to communicate a close connection with Taiwan. I think from a security perspective, what we will be looking for are an increase in provocative acts by China during the course of the visit. I think it's unlikely that you'll see any type of direct threatening activity directed at the Speaker, but security officials will also be looking for increased disinformation activities. China will try to leverage this visit as a way to undercut the United States, and security officials will also be concerned about potential for cyber activities.
So how fine a line does the Speaker have to walk here? Is that long gone at this point? And how do you think China will respond?
I suspect that we will see some type of saber rattling in the region. You may see a military exercise. You may see some other physical activity in which China will seek to project strength. I think there's a high likelihood that we may see some type of cyber attack directed at U.S. information systems, whether government or non-government, as a way for China to, again, project their power and diminish the stature of the United States.
All right, John Cohen, we appreciate the analysis. And stick around, John, because we're going to talk to you again in just a moment. But first, we want to get to the world's most wanted terrorist, now dead after the CIA took out the leader of Al-Qaeda in a drone strike. Ayman al-Zawahiri was killed, in downtown Kabul after more than 2 decades of hunting him. The president is calling this a significant win in the fight against terror. Our ABC News senior White House correspondent Mary Bruce has more on that.
New details about the CIA drone strike in downtown Kabul that left one of the most wanted men in the world dead on his balcony.
Justice has been delivered.
Ayman al-Zawahiri, the leader of Al-Qaeda, had been Osama bin Laden's right-hand man, a key architect behind the bombings of American embassies in Kenya and Tanzania, the suicide bombing of the U.S. Navy ship Cole off the coast of Yemen, and the attacks on the World Trade Center and the Pentagon in September of 2001 that left nearly 3,000 dead, hunted by the U.S. for more than 2 decades.
No matter how long it takes, no matter where you hide, if you are a threat to our people, the United States will find you and take you out.
Where Zawahiri was found was right in the middle of Kabul, in one of the wealthiest neighborhoods very near the U.S. Embassy. A senior U.S. official saying the CIA learned that he had moved to Kabul to reunite with his wife and children. For months, the CIA watched the house. Zawahiri never left, but was frequently seen on the balcony. The official said President Biden was first briefed on the intelligence in April, and as more information was confirmed, gave the go-ahead early last week. Days later, the time was right. Early Sunday in Kabul, with the armed drone invisible overhead, Zawahiri walked out on his balcony, and 2 Hellfire missiles were launched right at him, killing him immediately. But the administration says no civilians, including his family inside the house, were harmed. And while there is no question this is a huge success for the CIA, this does also reveal that the Taliban is still harboring Al-Qaeda terrorists and raises questions about how many others there may be. Diane?
All right, Mary Bruce, thank you. And let's bring back ABC News contributor John Cohen for more on this. John, what do we know about al-Zawahiri, and how severe of a blow is this to Al-Qaeda?
Well, it's always a good day when you can take out the leader of one of the most significant foreign terrorist organizations in the country. Ayman al-Zawahiri was a longtime extremist. He was Osama bin Laden's number 2. While bin Laden was the charismatic frontman for Al-Qaeda, Zawahiri was really the intellectual body behind the organization. He came from an upper middle class family. He was intelligent. He was a physician, but he was also very committed to the extremist ideological beliefs of the terror organization. He'd been quiet for a number of years, and I have to believe, though, that one of the reasons why the U.S. engaged in this kinetic action, because of late, Zawahiri was behind the release of a number of online calls and videos that were calling for attacks against the West in Europe and the United States. Very graphic videos and very detailed in describing how lone wolves should go out and conduct attacks in the West.
Now, White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan says that this proves President Biden was right to pull troops out of Afghanistan and other personnel. But others are pointing to the fact that Zawahiri was in Kabul, saying that that shows this is a failure. So what's your take? Does this instill more or less confidence in the U.S.'s ability to keep Afghanistan from turning into a haven for terrorists without boots on the ground?
Look, there are important reasons why both the Trump administration and the Biden administration went down the path of removing our forces from Afghanistan. And I think that decision was made with a very clear-eyed understanding that it would present logistical and intelligence vulnerabilities at a time when we are seeing the Islamic State and Al-Qaeda go through a transformation, in a sense becoming foreign terrorist 2.0. What this operation demonstrates, though, is that even though the Taliban is not necessarily our friend, and even though we may have fewer assets in Afghanistan, we still have the ability to collect intelligence. We still have the ability to develop a pattern of life on a potential target, and we have the ability to carry out a lethal strike against one of the most prolific terrorist leaders in the world.
All right, John Cohen, great to have your analysis. Thank you.
Thanks.
And the White House is appointing a new national monkeypox coordinator. The news comes as California joins New York and Illinois in declaring a state of emergency over a rise in cases. The CDC is reporting over 5,800 confirmed cases of monkeypox across the country, and now those cases include 4 children. ABC News chief medical correspondent Dr. Jen Ashton is here to help us unpack this a little. Dr. Jen, thanks for being on. You know, monkeypox primarily had been transmitted between men who have sex with men, but it is showing up in other people too. So what do we know at this point about how this spreads and who is most at risk?
Well, Diane, first of all, I think people need to understand that in general, it's not so easy to catch this virus. It's definitely not as transmissible as coronavirus, for example. In general, it requires direct skin-to-skin contact, usually of a prolonged nature. But it can also be spread via respiratory droplets. It can be spread via sharing utensils or clothing like towels or bed sheets. And, you know, again, just brushing up against someone, probably not enough to transmit it, but that skin-to-skin contact, which does not have to be sexual in nature, is really what's required. And when you talk about the 2 new pediatric cases, I think unfortunately we need to prepare ourselves that as the number grows, just basic math, we will see more people who fall out of that first group of gay or bisexual men becoming infected, and that unfortunately will include some children. We've already heard of at least 1 pregnant woman. And right now there are no U.S. associated deaths, but that number also could change if we see many, many more people infected.
So what precautions can we take and should we be taking at this point, both from a public health perspective and also from an individual perspective?
Well, I think individual perspective, hand hygiene. We can't overstate it, not only for monkeypox or coronavirus, but a slew of other bacterial and viral infectious diseases. So we should be cleaning surfaces, not over cleaning, but cleaning them. We should be cleaning our hands often and well and regularly. And obviously, if someone is a known or confirmed case or suspected case of monkeypox, then we want to keep our distance from that individual. And the difficult thing, Diane, with this virus is we don't yet clearly know whether there's a pre-symptomatic contagious period like there is with COVID, but we know that people are contagious for a period of 2 to 4 weeks or until those lesions or blisters are fully healed. So it can be quite a long window of time where people could transmit this virus.
All right, Dr. Jen Ashton, always great to have you. Thank you.
Thanks, Diane.
And WNBA star Brittney Griner was back in a Russian courtroom this morning as U.S. officials attempt to negotiate a prisoner swap for her release. Griner has been detained since February when she was accused of trying to smuggle less than 1 gram of hashish oil in her luggage while traveling through a Moscow airport. Today, her defense team called into question the testing methods of the vape cartridges at the center of the case and the competency of the employee conducting those tests. Let's bring in ABC News contributor and columnist at USA Today, Christine Brennan, and former resident legal advisor of the U.S. Embassy in Moscow, partner at Shruk Law Firm, Tom Firestone. For more on this, Christine, I want to start with you. What did you think about the arguments made in court today?
Diane and Tom, you know, this is the process that has to be played out. And it sounds to me, obviously, I'm not a legal expert, but having watched this closely now since February, since Brittney Griner was arrested. So it's been a long time that the idea of trying to get leniency in this trial, quote unquote, I think it's the defense is looking at and having questions asked about the process with the technicians in the lab. This, by the way, in the sports world happens all the time. Drug testing is such a huge part of an athlete's life that Brittney Griner would be very aware of the fact that you would have questions if there's a positive test, and that would again be in the world of sports. But these have been headlines for years in sports. And so this is not sports. This is real life. This is very serious. This is a Russian courtroom. But anything that her defense can do to try to help obviously get leniency, and also the key point, get this over with so that the Russians can declare victory if they want, which they will, I'm sure, and then hopefully move to the stage where they can negotiate and get her back home.
Now, Tom, Griner's team is trying to poke holes in how this lab tested for hashish oil. Why could that be important at this stage in the trial? Could it change the outcome?
It could change the sentence. I mean, she's already admitted to possessing and importing the substance, but the amount can have an effect on the length of the sentence she will get. So if they can prove it was a smaller amount, that might get them into a lower sentencing category.
Christine, there was noticeably some heavier security presence around Brittney as she appeared in a Moscow court today. Why is that?
Certainly not because she's going to be able to escape. I hate to sound so cynical, but I guess I don't hate to sound so cynical because so much of this has really been just a farce, obviously, for Russia, and they can go ahead and do what they want. It's their country, and obviously, but it almost, for me anyway, smacked of just a visual presence, just making a statement visually, sending an image out to the world that the Russians are even more serious about this and want to make sure they have security surrounding Brittney Griner, who, of course, is going nowhere.
All right, Christine Brennan, Tom Firestone, we appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Coming up, election-denying candidates and conspiracy theorists are running for office across the country. Could they put democracy in danger? We have an investigative report next. Welcome back. Voters are headed to the polls today for primary elections in 5 states: Michigan, Missouri, Kansas, Arizona, and Washington. It's shaping up to be a key test of former President Trump's influence over the Republican Party. Several candidates in Arizona have echoed Trump's false claims that the election in 2020 was stolen, and some are now suggesting that they would refuse to concede a potential loss. 538's Kaylee Rogers has more on the elections.
President Trump had his election stolen, not just in Arizona, but in other states too. We must now take this fight to Washington, D.C. and vote out all the dirty Democrats who have stolen our republic.
That's Ron Watkins, the former administrator of an online message board where Q, the shadowy figure behind QAnon, posted many of his missives. Followers of the QAnon conspiracy theory think that Democrats and Hollywood elites are part of an underground satanic pedophile ring, and Watkins himself is widely believed to be one of the people behind the Q account. Now he's running for Arizona's 2nd congressional district. Watkins' chances in Arizona are slim, but he's not the only candidate in the state who is both an election denier and a QAnon supporter. 538 and ABC News have been tracking candidates running in the primaries who have questioned the results of the 2020 election. While election deniers are running in multiple states on August 2nd, we're going to focus on Arizona today because there's a lot to cover in the Copper State. The Republican primary for governor in Arizona is heating up, with former TV anchor Carrie Lake and former State Board of Regents member Karen Taylor Robeson as close frontrunners. While Robeson has refused to share her thoughts on the 2020 election, Lake has repeatedly claimed it was stolen. Here's Lake at a recent debate.
You've called Joe Biden an illegitimate president. What does that mean?
He lost the election and he shouldn't be in the White House. We had a corrupt election.
Lake also has ties to QAnon. She invited a QAnon follower to speak at a campaign event last October. And she's been photographed with none other than Ron Watkins. In the Republican race for Secretary of State, Trump-endorsed State Representative Mark Fincham was deeply involved in the Stop the Steal movement and is also a QAnon supporter. And then there's State Representative Shauna Bollig, who sponsored a bill that would have allowed the state legislature to overturn election results. Remember, Arizona was the target of a lot of Trump's election fraud claims. State Republicans there even launched a partisan audit of the results in search of evidence of fraud. In the end, that audit found that Biden had actually won by even more votes than initially believed.
All right, our thanks to Kaylee Rogers from 538 for that report. Now, Kansas is also holding the first popular vote on abortion rights in nearly 50 years. Voters will decide whether to give state lawmakers the power to restrict abortion rights in the first major ballot initiative since Roe versus Wade was overturned. 538's Galen Droop joins me live now for more on that. Now, Kansas leans Republican, but the polls show that this could be a very close vote, Galen. So what are you watching for?
You're absolutely correct. Kansas leans Republican. That may, in fact, be putting it lightly, right? When you look at voter registration, Republicans make up about 44% of voters, Democrats 26%. However, the abortion debate brings Kansans a lot closer. So in recent polling in Kansas, we've seen voters roughly split in terms of whether they think abortion should be legal or illegal in most cases. In recent polling on this particular ballot question, we see that the margin is almost within the margin of error. 47% of Kansans saying that they plan to support the amendment, and 44% saying they don't. And voting no here is to say that you want to maintain the state Supreme Court's position that abortion is protected in Kansas.
Now, 538's polling shows that Democrats are gaining some ground heading into November, but that they still have a long way to go. So how does this abortion rights issue factor into that?
It's a really important question, and it's a complicated one. We've seen since the Dobbs decision in June that congressional generic ballot polling, which is essentially when you ask voters, would you support a Republican or a Democrat in this election, has been narrowing, and Democrats have been improving their lot. Previously, Republicans were leading by about 2 points. And I think we can say that that's in some cases due to the Dobbs decision, Democrats becoming more motivated to vote. And, some voters who support abortion rights who might have otherwise voted for Republicans saying that they now might support a Democrat, particularly in state level races, right? Like governor's races, where this is really going to matter and those people are going to make those decisions. At the same time, when you look at polling, it is still the case that inflation ranks #1 on voters' priorities list. So it's an open question as we get into the fall whether the economy will trump everything or whether abortion will still remain an important factor in voters' minds. Recently, we've also seen sort of news increase the salience of guns, increase the salience of other issues, democracy issues in the January 6th hearings. Will those issues kind of stick around come November? It really is an open question. We're going to have to wait and see.
All right, Galen Drew, great to have you. Thank you. Coming up, Beyonce is facing criticism for a lyric in one of the hits on her new album. How the Grammy winner is responding to the backlash. Coming up. Welcome back. Beyonce says she will remove the lyric spaz from her hit new album Renaissance after being called out by listeners that said it's considered derogatory in the disability community. Now, this comes just weeks after Lizzo faced backlash for using that word in one of her songs and then changed that same lyric. ABC's Kana Whitworth has the latest.
The 28-time Grammy winner catching flack for what some are calling an offensive lyric in one of her new songs. In the song Heated, Beyonce using the word spaz, which can be a shorthand term for the medical condition spasticity. This means there's an abnormal increase in muscle tone or stiffness, which may interfere with movement and speech. Spasticity can also be associated with discomfort or pain. The condition is usually caused by damage to nerve pathways in the brain or spinal cord that control muscle movement.
Using the word spaz to describe someone who's just a little bit out of control in an emotional sense sort of makes light of someone's actual physical suffering.
Many finding its inclusion in music today to be a form of ableism or discrimination against those with a disability. One Twitter user saying, Beyonce used the word spaz in her new song Heated. Feels like a slap in the face to me, the disabled community, and the progress we tried to make with Lizzo. Earlier this summer, Lizzo removing the same word from one of her hit songs, but it surfaced again with Beyonce. Beyonce's team telling ABC News the word, not used intentionally in a harmful way, will be replaced.
Where my girls at?
The lyrical revision from Beyonce coming after Lizzo said, as an influential artist, she is dedicated to being part of the change she wants to see in the world. She also issued a statement at the time saying, let me make one thing clear. I never want to promote derogatory language. I've had many hurtful words used against me, so I understand the power words can have.
And let's bring in senior entertainment reporter from ESPN's Anscape, Kelly Carter, for more on this. Kelly, thanks for being here. What did you think of how Beyonce and her team handled this?
I mean, they came in swiftly as they should. I think the thing that we all know to be true about Beyonce is that she's very inclusive. She's very progressive. And she obviously didn't use that word intentionally and certainly not to cause harm. I mean, in fact, this new album, Renaissance, is inspired by and dedicated to, in a lot of ways, a Black queer community. So this is something that Beyonce takes very seriously. And I think that it's important that she came out kind of strong once it was brought to her attention that she used something that could be potentially harmful to a community of people.
So how important is it for someone as big as Beyonce, one, to use a word like this, but then also to make a change like this quickly?
Well, I mean, I think this is a lot of new information, I think, for people. I mean, this is a word, quite frankly, that has been used in music in the Black community and in pop culture for a long time without understanding where it comes from and what it means to people who are disabled. And so I think that it's important that Beyonce, who is an influential artist, obviously, steps out, comes out front and says, I'm going to make this change because this was called to my attention.
All right, Kelly Carter, always great to have you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. I'm Diane Macedo. Stay with us as ABC News Live continues with more news, context, and analysis after this.
Hi everyone, George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.